Good morning, children. I hope you people have listened to the previous video about the early nationalists or the moderates. They were the members of Indian National Congress, right? And their, what they were believing into and their characteristics. They believe in the Britishers' methods of justice, right? They believe in their Western education. They believe in all the goodness of the Britishers, right? They simply believe that Britishers is a boon. They were the boon to India, right, everyone? Now, this video is in continuation with the previous one. Now, here we simply, make ourselves aware about more characteristics, more features, their beliefs and their faith, right, of the early nationalists and moderates. Please kindly don't get confused ki here they were there to attack the Britishers, they were protesting against the Britishers. No, they were not protesting against the Britishers. They were just keeping their demands in a mildful, in a mild and a calm manner, right, in a peaceful. They simply adopted peaceful methods. Clear, everyone? So let's start with early nationalists now. Their struggle of early nationalists, now their beliefs. Now I'm going to explain you about their beliefs and then later on their methods. So their beliefs were what? They were the band of loyalists who were proud of their British connections. I already explained you they were quite loyal to the Britishers. Clear. Next, England they look for inspiration and guidance. They always get inspiration from England, right? That's why they simply appreciated Britishers and all Europeans. Next, Dadabhai Naoroji recognized the benefits of English language. Don't get confused. Dadabhai Naoroji was there to protest. No, he simply believed in English education, in the Western education of the Britishers. Clear, everyone? Next, and the Western education. He's believed simply into language and their education. And somehow, if you remember, the Britishers has simply, benefited India out of this, and the Indians, they were quite wise to get the benefit out of the education and the press. Clear, everyone? If you see in chapter 1, they simply, rejected and they were quite reluctant to accept all these things. But in chapter 2, in undergrowth of nationalism, they started accepting the positive points of Western education and the press. Clear, everyone? In the same way, these early nationalists also believe in their methods of sense and justice in their education, right? Now come on to their methods now. Now, their methods of early nationalists were they did not believe in agitation or unconstitutional means. Agitation means protest. Unconstitutional means they're not going to break their rules and regulations. They will follow the constitution heartily, right? These moderates follow and accept the constitution without any negative points. And if there are some negative points in it, they simply criticized them in a mild, in a peaceful manner. Clear? Next, now petitions. Now, what form of agitations they simply present in front of the Britishers? Now they simply file petitions, their resolutions, then meetings in towns. They distribute the pamphlets, right? Pamphlets means what they wanted to say in a peaceful manner. They simply publish those in the slips or in the papers, and then they distribute in the form of pamphlets. Clear? Now they simply prepared memorandum for the government committees. Memorandum means applications, in a written manner. They simply published, right, and then they submit it in the government committees. Next, whose government committees? British's government committees. Next, now they send delegates to England. Now they send their representatives to England, right, to have to talk with British authorities. Delegates means representatives, and these representatives belong to which part of INC? The early nationalist, right? These are all Indians. Don't get confused. They're all educated Indians or the early nationalist. Next, they wanted to mitigate the evils of British rule. Mitigate means they wanted to lessen the evils of British rule, though they were not here to criticize them, but they really want with their demands. If you have seen in my previous video, they simply kept few reforms. They simply asked for few reforms in constitution as well as the administration, right? So they just wanted to reduce the evils of Britishers. Otherwise, they believed in their methods of justice. They believe whatever Britishers do to Indians. Clear? But that too, if they wanted to criticize, mildly, right? And they don't go against the Britishers. Clear? Let's move on to another slide. Next, now official attitude towards the Congress. Now these Britishers, now see, till now we simply did on the part of Indians, right? Like with the help of Britishers, they were founded Indian National Congress. Now what was the attitude? Now this is a two-way process, right? On the one hand, we simply read a lot about the Indians. They form INC, right? They presented their demands, and all members become early nationalists or moderates. On the other hand, we have another party also in India, and that was a dominating party known as Britishers. Now what was their attitude towards this body? In this slide, I'm going to explain you what was the Britishers attitude. Have they protested against against this body, or have they criticized, or have they suppressed this body? So let's start with this now. Now, what was the attitude of the Congress? If you see, in the beginning, the government favored the Congress movement. Congress movement, that means this INC. And in fact, the viceroy at that time, the viceroy was Lord Dufferin, and he has given a garden party to the Congress, right? But as a campaign gained vigor, the government turned hostile. Well, now what happened? Now, earlier Britishers were quite happy. They don't have any problem with this body. They simply have given the garden party, and at that time, it was a appreciative task on the part of Britishers. That means they were giving a garden party. That means they were acclaiming the efforts of Indian National Congress. But what happened in the coming years, when more and more demands started presenting on part of the early nationalists or moderates, these Britishers turned hostile and angry, right? Because they were not in a favor of their demands. Clear? So if they accept their demands, definitely then they will not be in a dominating position. Britishers never accept their demands, except few. This I'll let you know later on, right? So Britishers are here only to dominate Indians. They don't want to listen to their demands, and here they were simply presenting their demands day by day. Who? The early nationalists. Clear, everyone? So this way, these Britishers were started getting angry. They were started turning aggressive and hostile towards Indian National Congress, right? And they called Congress a seditious body. Seditious means this body was there to criticize the Britishers. They simply comment the Congress as a seditious body. Seditious means the charges, instigating the charges against the Britishers, right? Next, now instructions. They simply instruct the government employees not to attend the Congress sessions. Now they started convincing the other members of the Congress not to attend the sessions, right, of the Congress. Clear? Next, they divided, and they started implementing here the divide and rule policy. Clear? So within the Congress, they started going for divide and rule. Divide means they always this is their favorite weapon. What? Divide and rule policy. And they simply go for dividing the communities in India. That means Hindu and Muslim. And what they started saying now, what they started, the very best strategy which they have adopted during the formation of Indian National Congress was what? They started was criticizing this body, and they simply said to the Muslims, this is the Hindu dominated body, right? Clear, everyone? So this way they started instigating the anger, instigating the Muslims against the Hindus. Clear? Let's move on to another slide. Now the failures and the achievement of the Congress. Clear? Now let's move on to the failures and achievement. What was their failure and achievement? Why they were failed? Were the Britishers ever listened to their demands? So this slide explained lot many things. Now the very first thing, first of all, the failure of early nationalists. Now the failure, they were criticized for the beggarly method of prayers. Now if you see, the early nationalist methods were quite moderate. They simply pray, they please, they present their demands in a in a mild manner. So basically they were being criticized, and they started they simply started getting the comments of the beggar. Beggar means they always have to beg. So other Indians, other part of INC, which I'll be clearing later on, were assertives. Everyone knows in class 8 we did. So these assertives started criticizing the early nationalists, and they started calling them beggars. Clear? Next, now in those early days, the Congress lacked mass appeal. Now if you see these educated Indian, right, they have the education, but during that time, hardly handful of Indians have received education from abroad. What about the others Indians? Other part of India, the other part of India was totally illiterate, right? They were the masses. Now masses comprises of middle class also, the lower class also, the peasants, the farmers. Were they all qualified? No, they were not qualified and literate. Clear, everyone? So they lacked mass appeal. That means masses were not knowing what they were doing. Clear, everyone? Is that clear? Next, now the moderate believe that sooner or later the Britishers would agree to establish representative institutions in India. Now moderates somehow they say no, you always have to believe the Britishers. Why? Because Britishers somehow someday will accept the British, but this one will accept the representative institutions in India. Right? Representative institution means some institution which represent more Indians. Clear, everyone? So they were under an illusion that someday Britishers would accept their institutions, their representative institution, but they were wrong. They were not, they were not seeing here that their interests were clash with the Indians. Britishers' interest was not here to to implement the welfare. They were here to dominate India. Clear? Next, now they would not see that Britishers and Indians' interests clash with each other. I've already mentioned. Now come on to the achievement. Now, so after doing all these things, after begging, after adopting some peaceful methods, some peaceful protest, so have they achieved something? Yes, they have achieved. Let's see their achievement now. Now they infused national consciousness among various sections. Now nationally, all the Indians started, making themselves aware about the political system. about the working criteria of the Britishers, right? What they work, what they plan, for the Indians, for their administrations. How come the Indians were working under the Britishers, right? Their system of governance. So this way, somehow they achieved. Somehow they somehow under their influence, few Indians come to realize, their working criteria was what. Few Indians came to get trained in this. Clear. Next, now they popularize now these early nationalists, what they simply started using the term democracy, liberty, representative institution, which earlier Indians were totally lacking. They were not knowing the meaning of democracy. Democracy means public right, and here no rights was given to the public, right? But after receiving Western education, after moving abroad, many Indians have learned lot many things. They simply see the free and democratic institutions working outside, right? So they do wanted this kind of institutions to work in India as well. So at least these early nationalists have make them aware about these words, about these terminologies and ideologies. Clear. Next, now they explain how Britishers were exploiting the India resources. Now technically they start explaining the India, right? They start explaining Indians ki how come they were attacking the economy. They simply drain all the wealth from India to England in the form, they simply in the form of how they come, they take the wealth now in the form of salaries, the pensions they were giving to their Britishers, their Europeans, right, out of Indian treasury. So this way they were draining the Indian treasury. Clear. Next, now Ranade and Gokhale were passionate supporters of reform. Now Gokhale, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Justice Ranade, right, everyone, and these were all supporters of reforms in India. They tried to bring various reforms, but within the British constitutions. Clear. Now next, they pressurized the government for legislative council, and the result was what? India Council Act of 1892. At last, one achievement on the part of moderate was what? They've accepted what? The India Council Act, the Act of 1892, and this they made in the year 1892, where they have given the appointment of Indians to the legislative and executive councils. This was the biggest achievement on the part of India. At least they got the participation in the highest body, in the highest parliamentary body, which was under the Britishers, and that was the biggest achievement ever they have. Clear. So this way we have come to the end of the document. I hope you people have understood what is it all about, right? The early who were early nationalists or moderates, they were the members of Indian National Congress. What they were believing into, they were believing into British methods of justice, right? And on the side by side they started demanding, they started asking for various demands and reforms, which if Britishers accept, then they will be at benefit. But Britishers only have accepted few demands, and that too it was their achievement, right? And what demand they've accepted, they simply what they did, they simply founded India Council Act of 1892. Now Indians too started getting the appointment in executive council and legislative council, the highest administrative bodies working under the Britishers. Clear, everyone? So I hope so people have understood by now who were early nationalists, who were early nationalists or moderate, what they tried to, and what was their methods and beliefs. So listen to the videos attentively, will get everything. Clear? So till then, thank you so much.